everyone. Welcome to our bi-monthly Glossy Beauty Debrief here on LinkedIn. I'm Lexi Lebsack, West Coast correspondent here at Glossy, and I am joined by my colleagues on the beauty team, including Tatiana Pyle, our managing editor here at Glossy, Emily Jensen, Glossy's senior beauty reporter, and Courtney Marabella, Glossy's social media and audience manager. Hi, everybody. All right. Well, Glossy just finished our very first luxury week. Very exciting, so much good content. And now that everything is published and live on the site and all aggregated through a single link that we're going to pop into the comments as well as the comments of this invite here. So now that everything is sort of published and live, we wanted to take a second to kind of go through some of the highlights from Glossy's first luxury week. To give you a little context, it was a deep dive into the luxury subcategories that are really thriving right now, the state of beauty and luxury and where they intersect right now. And that includes sort of how the 1% is indulging, what they're spending, what they're buying. It also goes into status now, and all of this with a lens on the resulting opportunities for brands and retailers with sort of long-term implications. So we published around 24 luxury-focused features, stories, briefings, and podcast episodes, and we're going to walk through a few of them today, starting with Tatiana. I'd love to kind of kick it off with you today. What was your luxury focus for the week, and what did you find?
Yeah, so for my luxury focus, I focused on two really interesting different subcategories. The first being Mexico's luxury era. Mexico City, more particularly, Mexico City has been experiencing a really huge boost in their economy, partly due to tourism, but also due to this growing retail landscape that they are experiencing right now. So in the past year alone, Dior has opened its 5th store in the area and the first men's shop. It's opened a Van Cleef store. It's opened a Zadig and Voltaire store. So a lot of brands are flocking to the area, seeing this thriving opportunity and really capitalizing off of the, number one, huge landmass, but also this hungry luxury dollar. It was really interesting. I also spoke with a founder whose name is Noor. He is the founder of a clean beauty brand that is based and birthed in Mexico City called Hora Mexico. And it is a prestige brand that really focuses on bright, beautiful color cosmetics, as well as a huge push for sustainability. So all of the packaging is biodegradable, none of it's plastic, and it's all refillable. It's a really exciting brand that's happening during a time where the market is really exciting as well. A lot of people want to support local artisans and local businesses there. So it was really fun to talk with him and learn more about his own personal luxury recommendations, some of which I was familiar of, and some of which, upon Googling, I was like, wow, I need to go to Mexico City and visit these shops and these hotels and restaurants as well.
How interesting. I know that we've seen like a lot of other like mass and prestige brands also entering Mexico, specifically Mexico City, over the last year that we've reported on. That's so fascinating. What would you say? I mean, obviously tourism is part of it, but curious as to like what you sort of see the sort of like catalyst for all of this sort of being.
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, I think there's a huge budding luxury market. So some of the reporting that I found was that the luxury sector is estimated to grow to about $3.7 billion in 2004. As I mentioned, so many new luxury brands and retailers have opened up stores and shops in the area, but also the Michelin star. They came down and they did their first Michelin guide in Mexico City this year. And also Soho House, which is a luxury members only club, has opened up its first Mexico City location and also the first location in Latin America. There are a few that are following this year as well. So I think there's just so many exciting things happening in Mexico simultaneously. outside of just an increase in tourism, partly due to the pandemic, that a lot of eyes are on this space, especially in the retail sector and beyond just some of the new higher end brands and retails that are opening up. There are also a lot of five-star hotels that have opened up in Mexico in the last few months. The Alexander Hotel in Mexico City, for instance, just opened up in July. And there's so many five-star, keep saying restaurants, but there's so many five-star hotels that are also there in existence as well. And I think people are coming there and they're wanting to spend their money on really cool, local, high-class products, whether it be beauty, wellness, which Mexico City also has a thriving wellness scene, to furniture. You know, when I was speaking with Noor, he mentioned so many interesting artisans who are producing these really cool and sculptural pieces of furniture that people are shipping back to their respective homes. So there's just so many opportunities to shop there, which I think in turn has translated into this huge retail opportunity that I spoke about.
Me and my husband went on a little trip there last summer, and I have to say that it was one of those things where we're like, we have to go because it feels like everyone is going. It feels like everyone on social is having these really awesome weekend trips to Mexico City, having these amazing sort of experiences. And I sort of can attest to what you're saying, Tatiana. I feel like there were so many options of where to stay. There were so many amazing restaurants, so many Michelin-star restaurants, and so many just luxury restaurants that we just like couldn't even get into. And then the shopping, I mean, I don't know. This was my first time there, so I'm not sure exactly how it's evolved, but the shopping was very good. It was very luxury. There was so many different neighborhoods to shop in, to explore. I think you're really hitting on something here.
Yeah, totally. It's a thriving city for sure. I think if anyone has an opportunity to visit, definitely go prepared to discover a lot of great new luxury brands that are probably going to take over the market at some point. And then the other story that I had that I thought was really interesting and fun was this wellness spa era that we're all in right now, this luxury wellness spa era that we're all in now. So if anyone lives in New York, I'm sure you've heard of Remedy Place, The Well, Continuum, which just opened a few months ago, and Othership, which is like the cool, hip, younger brother compared to all of these. There is a thriving wellness market here in New York, which was really interesting as I was doing some research, because I think when you immediately think of wellness, and especially luxury wellness, your first thought is probably Los Angeles or somewhere on the West Coast, Utah or something like that. But yeah, New York is it's growing its amount of wellness spas, and people are really wanting to dip and play into this space. And it was really interesting to find and discover all of the interesting amenities, all the interesting services, and also the varying price points, which in some ways blew my mind. So Continuum, that just opened up in May, their highest price point is $10,000 a month. And they did share with me that they didn't share how many people, but they did share that there are members who are paying $10,000 a month for the services.
What do you get for that?
So $10,000 a month, you get a highly personalized experience. In their words, they are going to give you a full blood test and MRI scan head to toe. So it's essentially very similar to, and the name is escaping me right now, but there is a MRI scanner that will scan your body and tell you anything that you should be aware of, like any inflammation in your body that may potentially lead to chronic illness in the future. So that's essentially what a Continuum is doing. In the words of Tom, one of the founders, he told me they essentially want to be your pre-medical provider. So they want to ensure that you are being your healthiest version of yourself, to decrease the amount of times you have to go to your doctor or to work in tandem with your doctor. If there are any concerns or health issues that you may be experiencing, they basically want to work to create a more holistic health journey for you, so that you aren't having to take medications if you don't need them, or that you are working out more, that you are doing things like, regularly taking time to go to the sauna, or to do cold plunges, or to get massages, or to do the hyperbaric chamber, which helps with blood pressure and cholesterol. But yeah, it's super personalized. It's well out of my budget, but it sounds very exclusive. And I think if you had the money to afford it, it sounds like something that is worth the costs.
Yeah, I think if you have $10,000 a month extra to spend on a spa, your life is probably already pretty nice. You're probably pretty well. But I would also would love to get some of those if I had that budget. And obviously, as you said, like 10K a month, that's the high end of this. But for like the other sort of mid tier or even more accessible tier of this kind of luxury space, if you are, I imagine the people going to this, you really want bang for your buck. Like you want to get a high return on whatever you're spending. So like, how do these spas differentiate themselves? How do they stand out and say it's worth to spend your 1,000, 3,000, whatever your budget is here, as opposed to somewhere else?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and that's also something that Jill, who's lurking right now, asked me as we were writing this, as I was writing the story. Because I mean, transparently, a lot of them are offering a lot of similar amenities and spa services. So I think one of the biggest differentiators when I was speaking actually to a consumer is that whereas you have like a bathhouse, for instance, which is very for lack of better words right now, mixy per se, like where there's just everyone just walking around. There's no quiet space. There's not really a lot of moments to have like siloed experiences. For to a place like Remedy, where they're pretty much the antithesis of that. They're not really encouraging opportunities for like big communal experiences. They're really personalized, and it's like if you want to do a one-on-one consultation or you want to do like a close friends like spa day, that's kind of where these luxury places are. I think like winning in this category right now, they're saying, hey, we get it. You may not want to go to an old school Turkish bathhouse because there's too many people, but we're going to give you a highly personalized, highly solo experience so that you can still get your wellness for the day, but you don't have to interact with people if you don't want to. But if you do want to, you can, but it'll only be with like your close friends, which I thought was really, really cool. And especially during this new era where a lot of people are exploring sober, curious lifestyles, and they're actually not even drinking at all. One of the interesting things that I found as I was writing the story was that 50% of US based Gen Z consumers are prioritizing fitness and wellness to the point where they are reshifting their budget to focus or to spend money on wellness experiences such as luxury spas. And also, young adults aren't drinking. So they're looking for opportunities to experience sober, curious moments beyond just going out to a party. And that's what a Remedy place, that's what a Continuum, or that's what that's what they're offering these people who are exploring non-alcohol based social events.
That's so fascinating. Like, and you're right. Like, if you're not drinking in New York or any big city, there's not a ton of places to go and like hang out and socialize with friends. Are they open like later in the evening as well, these spas, because of that?
So that's actually a really good question. They aren't open, which is probably, if there's anyone listening interested in starting a wellness club, that's probably where you can get your milk and butter right now. Having a late night wellness spot that, still offers a lot of those luxury amenities that Gen Z wants, but at a later time.
Totally. That's a good idea for someone out there.
Yeah. Well, I'm done talking for now, but Emily, I'm going to toss it over to you. What stories were you working on for Wellness Week or Luxury Week?
Yes. Well, there's wellness is definitely part of, I think, all of these luxury stories in a way. And I guess I'll kind of start with like one of the first stories I did, which is about this new era of tanning culture. And I'm sure we all know like the famous anecdote of like Coco Chanel went on a cruise in the early 1900s and came back with this golden tan, and that set off this status to have a tan, at least in the Western world, for wealthy consumers. Like this was a sign that you had the luxury time to be like lying out on your yacht in like Saint Tropez or whatever. And that still holds true to an extent. 100 years later, that having a tan is still a sign of wealth. But because in the past, 5-10 years, there's so much more awareness around the dangers of the sun and how laying out in the sun can, impact your skin in a negative way, both aesthetically and also health-wise. It's a little bit more verboten to kind of brag about lying out in the sun on your yacht or on the beach on your vacation, but people still want to tan, obviously. So that's kind of created this industry of high-end tanning products. So brands like Dior have launched like the Dior Solar collection, which has like $70 tanning lotions, or Sicily, another high-end French skincare company. They have a $170 tanning face cream. I'm sure we all know about the Drunk Elephant bronzing drops that were a big hit on TikTok this year. Those are a bit more affordable, like at $38. And brands like Typology or Wind, more kind of indie brands, have also gotten in on this like high-end luxury face body tanning products that they feel nicer, they smell nicer than maybe the tanning products you could get previously at like the drugstore that kind of are like sticky and not really pleasant, not something you would put like on your shelf, let's say. And with these kind of new products too, there's also been new demographics getting into tanning. Like I spoke to James Harknett, who's a celebrity tanner based out of London. He said, he's been doing this for 20 years. And he said he used to see like 5% of the consumers were male, let's say. And now it's actually closer to 50% male and female consumers who want to achieve that tan. Or I spoke with Hind Sebti, the founder of Wind. She's Moroccan, and Wind is kind of inspired by her Moroccan culture and heritage. And she specifically wanted to make her tanning serum work for deeper skin tones who previously weren't really addressed in the tanning market. It was something that was perceived of as only for fairer skin consumers. So we're seeing, more Black or Asian consumers also get into tanning as well, which we didn't before. And of course, as we all know, like SPF is now in itself like a luxury product. Like Sun's Care is also, again, not just a drugstore product. It is like a high-end product you might see from these more aspirational skincare brands. And we're kind of seeing the same with tanning as well now. This is so interesting. Wait, Emily, I have a random question, which is, I know you said the formulations have gotten better, but curious, how much better have they gotten? Like, do the self-tanners feel better? Like, I put self-tanner on today and I still stink. Like, I just stink. Yeah. I mean, like, the core technology of tanning hasn't really changed. Like, what actually makes your skin bronze, it's still like DHA, which just interacts. It's like a type of acid that just interacts with like the top layer of your skin, which is also why everyone wants a tan to last longer. It can only last so long because it's really just like working on that top layer of skin, and then as you kind of wash and like shed your skin naturally, that will fade. But I think what's changed is like there's an additional skincare products going into these that are making them into like a nicer experience, like things like hyaluronic acid or moisturizing agents that do come at a higher cost, and it's making it into a bit more of a pleasant experience, maybe higher end fragrance ingredients as well. So the actual, again, like tanning agent is still kind of the same, but maybe what you're getting around it in that experience. And also I would just say too, in a purely aesthetic sense, like the packaging and presentation is also a bit more high end. It's kind of creating that more sort of soft power with it, even if the product itself isn't hugely different.
Emily, I like that you talked about the introduction of skincare into tanning. I think that's kind of when I've been seeing tanning more, especially as a woman of color. It just historically, people I know didn't get tans, but I've been seeing so many more brown and Black women talk about tanning on their TikTok accounts, and it's really intrigued me a bit. I'm like, I didn't even know that people could tan like me outside of just going outside in the sun. So I do think tanning has taken on a whole new like life, and it's really interesting to see. But I'm curious, now that tanning has become kind of like an everyday thing, does having a real quote unquote tan still matter? And why does a tan still connote luxury?
I think it does. It's like this weirdly paradoxical thing where like we acknowledge that it's bad for you to lay out and get a tan, but I think there is still the desire for the quote unquote real tan. Like James Harknett, the celebrity tanner I spoke to, said something really interesting where he's like, some of my clients still, they tag on their styling photos when they're out on the red carpet, like their makeup artist, their hairdresser, the clothes they're wearing, the nail artist, but they don't tag the tanner. And it's kind of still this like shame of like admitting you have a fake tan, even though, as we know, most celebrities on the red carpet, their hair is fake, the nails are fake. Like they've given themselves a whole new face through contouring, and that's totally fine to acknowledge, but we don't want to acknowledge that it's a fake tan per se. We still want the look of it. And even most people probably saw like Kim Kardashian went viral on TikTok for like showing her tanning beds in her offices, and got a lot of heat for that. But again, people still want to have that look of a tan, and I think that comes to like your second question of like, it still showcases wealth to have this tan, even if it's not so much about earning it, quote unquote, by lying out in the sun. I think now it's almost like having the tools to sort of like create this tan through these more high-end products that look real is still a status symbol. That still kind of shows that maybe you have the latest kind of greatest products, that you have the time to kind of like upkeep your skin this way. And we do still associate, I think, like a more bronzed skin, at least again in the Western kind of world, and especially for white skin, that still signifies status in some way, that you have this like bronze glowing look.
That makes total sense.
And I will still say, like, I am naturally very pale, and I still feel like I look better with a tan, and that's just like a deeply ingrained thing, I think, in a lot of people. Oh yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, like, I'm big on sunscreen. I take care of my skin. Obviously, we all, cover beauty, so that's ingrained in us. But you just feel better with a tan. It's like you can't break it. I can't break it from my childhood, seeing so many people who are like glamorous and beautiful and all of the stars just with a tan. Like, I don't know if I'll ever get over that, even though I don't really ever have one, but.
Yeah. And to your point, Emily, about signifying luxury and status, I think it's also thinking about like when you come back from vacation, everyone's like, you're so glowy, you look so tan. And, I really think, like you said, it's just a luxury status. It makes you look like you're living your best life.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I know we're getting short on time, so I'll kind of quickly go through the other story that I worked on, which is about this world of custom bespoke perfume. Like, we've covered, and lots of places have covered, just like how perfume is getting more and more expensive. Like, we're seeing teenagers and casual consumers getting into this world of like $300 or $500 fragrances, but the really, really high tier of fragrance is something you can't actually buy at the department store, and that's this world of completely bespoke perfumes. I spoke to one perfumer based in London who's kind of known as like the celebrity perfumer, I guess. Azzy Glazer is her name. She's made custom scents for like Helena Bonham Carter, for Cindy Crawford, and a scent from her starts because it can go up at 18,000 pounds for a fully custom perfume. And she's not the only one doing this. I know. What? Yeah. Yeah. And there's also people who, will create obviously just a custom eau de parfum you wear on your skin, but also like, people commission perfumes for like their yachts, or like the French brand Ex Nihilo made a custom perfume for some guys like Bel Air Mansion. There's like a whole world of like custom sensorial scents that you can purchase. That is so interesting. Why? I mean, I guess I maybe know the answer to this, but curious what you found. Why would someone want this instead of just like picking I know a lot of people can identify a fragrance really easily, and I know people don't necessarily want to scent their home in the same fragrance or scent their body in the same fragrance everyone's wearing, but there's so many fragrances out there. Why make one custom instead of find a niche one? And then also, like, what's the feature of this? Like, can this trickle down to mass? I think the appeal of it, part of it is just, I think if you have 18,000 pounds to spend on a product like this, it's almost like money is no object to you at that point. Like, the difference between $18,000 or pounds and like $300 is sort of meaningless if you're like Cindy Crawford and you're like flying your perfumer out in a custom jet to make you a scent. Like, it just doesn't really matter. You don't even look at the price at that point. But I do think, I spoke to one perfumer, Craig Andrade, who's an Australian perfumer. He's worked with Troye Sivan's brand Souling Yor, which came out earlier this year, and he keeps his client list, more secret, I will say, but he works with celebrities at that level. And, he felt like, I do think these are people who just really, 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 truly love scent, and they've smelled everything out there in all the stores, and they want something at that next level that is truly tailored for them. And it's a very intimate experience of working with a perfumer, like Craig or like Azzy, that you're really getting into like your childhood memories and like what is really meaningful to you. And to your second point, like, that is something that can't really be replicated at a mass market. When these perfume brands, when they're trying to make a scent to sell to hundreds and thousands of consumers, they need to kind of hit a sort of lowest common denominator. They need to hit on these trends, or they need to hit on something that most people can relate to. And that is just potentially never going to exactly hit on like your particular scent profile or desires. But we do see this kind of type of experience, I think, trickling down a bit. I spoke to Linda Pilkington, who's the founder of Ormond Jane, a British fragrance house, and she does make some of these custom scents for like 10,000 pounds or so, but she's also creating these in-store experiences that are more like $500-$600, where you can either alter a fragrance already in her line, like make it a bit stronger, make a custom bottle, or you can also build your own scent from existing accords that she's made. She's kind of still experimenting with this structure, but that's something to offer for that person who's like wants that custom experience, but doesn't have $10,000 to drop on a single fragrance. Wow, so fascinating. That's sort of where the $500, $600, $700 range. That's sort of where I thought you were going in the beginning of this before you said 18,000, and I was like, oh, okay. No, it's something else entirely. Yeah. Wow. So interesting. Yeah. And Lexi, I know you worked on some stories as well. Tell us a bit about your luxury stories. Yeah. I'll walk us through one before we have to jump off. And I was excited about this one a lot. I didn't really realize until after all the reporting, but I did a couple stories for last week, and I didn't really realize until after that one of the big themes I touched on is sort of like this luxury that you can't really buy, and sort of like what that looks like to the person who can spend 18,000 pounds on a custom fragrance, who can spend $10,000 a month at a luxury, place. So I spoke to Sakina Rao, who is the co-founder of Luminaire, for the Glossy Beauty podcast, which we'll put a link in. So if you want to keep listening to us here at Glossy, you can kind of tune into that one afterwards. But I learned all about the changing role for reaching the luxury VIC, which is shorthand for very important customer, which is sort of like saying the 1%. And it's this fashion, beauty, wellness, luxury consumer that is buying. It's a very small group, but they're buying the majority of the luxury offerings out there right now, especially as prices go higher. And this isn't normally a celebrity. This is kind of like the wealth that's sort of beyond celebrity. It's people who you don't really know, and people who come from all over the world, who maybe have a house in London, but are maybe from a different part of the world, or someone who's maybe a CEO, or someone who is not exactly in the spotlight and within one of these like very wealth creating industries. And she talked a lot about how this shift from celebrity and high profile individuals to this more like stealth luxury is what she called it. And so what they do at Luminaire is they basically help them to curate like an entire stylish lifestyle. And so originally that was kind of started in the fashion world, right? You would have, personal shoppers that are helping you to create an image, but it really has grown into this entire lifestyle sort of world. So they do mood boards, they do curation of, all kinds of lifestyle, fashion, beauty. They do inspiration, they do sourcing for you. They can connect you to luxury brands. They can do gift shopping. They can procure an apartment, a car, a Rolex, a Birkin. They can really procure anything that you want. And they're very popular. They have a wait list. It's very expensive once you actually get in with them. But all of this is really to say that what surprised me is how she explained the growing interest in beauty, and how Luminaire is really creating this blueprint to use beauty and wellness to reach 1% consumers. And how they're doing that is sort of offering, exactly like what I said, they're offering something that money can't buy. Even if you have all the money in the world, you can't necessarily get into like a press appointment or an influencer installation or an influencer activation to have a master class with a big celebrity makeup artist. You can't necessarily meet founders or have a private shopping experience. And you certainly can't always get a haircut or a color session or get in with a doctor that is very famous or very well known or sort of caters to this very elite clientele. So that's kind of where Luminaire steps in. They help by, one of the biggest things that they're doing right now is brokering this world of fashion or of wellness and beauty, which I thought was so fascinating. So that's makeup artists, haircuts and styles, massage, facial, surgeons, holistic practitioners. It's all kind of activations and access. And yeah, I think that was really interesting for me. I think that it's interesting how they're using wellness and beauty to kind of get in with this luxury shopper.
Yeah, and I like what you said about like the VIC, the very important clientele. Is this strategy that Luminaire uses? Like, can other retailers tap into this as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think that what Sukina was telling me is that the 1% shopper, they're very stealthy right now. They don't necessarily want to be on blast. They're not scrolling Instagram. They're not making content or anything like that, but they are seeing all of this stuff. And so they really want access into this world. And so some of the examples that she called out, like for example, over Fashion Week, of how brands were successfully reaching these like very stealthy clients were through almost like influencer-like activations. So she called out Aloe Yoga for having an activation they did in London Fashion Week 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. That was very, very successful. Barbara Sturm also did appointments in Paris Fashion Week, and there was like an IV component, a face mask experience component. So all of these things that are really based around wellness and taking a break and kind of like having this holistic experience. She also called out, and Emily, you must know this brand, but Vireo, which is like a perfume line. You're so much better at perfume than
me. Vireo.
Yeah,
I just
Vireo.
Spoke with the founder, Yasmin Sewell.
Of
yes,
course.
the kind of wellness luxury perfume brand.
Yes, perfect. So she also called out they did a collaboration in Fashion Week with a juice healthy food company called Wild and the Moon, which also does sort of like different pop-ups and collaborations. Like I was on their Instagram yesterday and I saw they had a Victoria Beckham like juice at one point. But yeah, so collaborating with these like health food companies, with these fitness, wellness, and then beauty products that sort of have this like holistic wellnessy feeling also are really like striking a chord right now with the 1%.
Lexi, I like what you said about creating an experience that money can't buy. That was one of the common threads when I was doing reporting for the luxury wellness spas. They are essentially providing a service that's so tailored, and as the founder of Continuum said, a white glove service that these consumers don't even have to think. They're essentially like thinking for them in every aspect of what they need. So with that being said, were there any brands or founders that Sukina said that really resonates with the VIC clientele?
Yeah, no, it's so funny because as you were talking, Tatiana, I was like, man, so much of what we're talking about has such like a little overlay, and they kind of like all bleed into each other, which I think was really interesting. Yes, she did call out some brands as well. So like in terms of fashion, it's sort of like what you would expect. It's like Thoreau and Hermes and Loewe and those sort of brands. And then for beauty, she talked a lot about beauty brands that have kind of a science-y feel to them. So she talked about Barbara Sturm. She talked about Augustine Bader. I can never say his name, and I've met him and he's so sweet. But it's sort of like they want that kind of stuff. But even beyond that, it's a lot of it is about access to even quiet doctors. So like holistic practitioners, people who are sort of basing, like meeting that middle ground between wellness and science. So like MDs who are also like very into integrated health and stuff like that, I think is sort of like where that consumer is sort of falling right now between beauty, wellness, and fashion. Well, I just realized that we went overtime today. Thank you all for listening. I hope that you enjoyed our conversation about all things luxury. We are going to pop a link into the comment section as well as to the comment section on the event. That's sort of the hub for all of our luxury content. So please check it out, and we will be back again in 2 weeks with another topic for our next conversation. Thank you all for joining. Thanks, everyone.